All right. Greetings, everyone. Peace and blessings be unto you all. I am Minister Jamie Eatman, and I am indeed on the rise. I know you all hear that as a matter of fact, you hear it twice a week, depending on if you're following both programs. But I do love saying it, particularly in this atmosphere. I really feel like I'm on the rise. This is a on the rise movement. Our intent is to educate, motivate, and inspire individuals to rise above life situation and circumstances. And hopefully, something will be said that will enable or empower you to do just that. But let us begin with prayer. Most Holy Father, we thank you. We thank you for another opportunity, another program. I thank you for my guest, Brother Gregory. I pray that as the program unfolds, that something will be said that'll influence someone's way of thinking, maybe even some actions or situations or circumstances in their lives. We just pray that you'll take charge of this program, and as people will encounter it, that they will be able to do so with open eyes, ears, minds, and hearts. So we pray that something will be said or done that will make a difference in their life, and that everything we do and say will be to your honor and to your glory. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Welcome, Brother Gregory. How are you? You want to take a moment to greet the guests?
Yes, I am. I'm blessed to be here. Right here in Atlanta, Georgia. Um, Born and raised, and I love that you have this show preaching positivity and making sure people understand that it's about positivity and none of that negative things that's going out in the world.
I like the way you say that preaching. You know, that's one of the biggest things. I have that minister on front of my name. I had considered removing it, but then I thought about it. The Bible speaks of ministers as those who serve others, so I kept it for that reason. But you're right. We actually use this format to, um, I wouldn't say get around the preaching, but hopefully to appeal to a larger audience, putting that same positivity out there and hopefully making a difference in someone's life. So I thank you for saying that. I feel like it's justified in what we're doing here. But thank you very much, good sir. Welcome to today's program. We're kind of going to pick up a little bit where we left off, and we're going to continue from there. And last week was a great program. When you came in, you made it that much better. But we're talking today about wealth. Wealth. We touched on a little bit of that last week. Kind of hard to talk about anything positive without somehow that coming into play, because the Bible speaks of God wanting us above all things to prosper, even as our souls prosper. So we're talking health, wealth, and prosperity, and those are the things that if someone actually want you to be blessed, they will want you to have those. And the Bible says we should want for others what we want for ourselves. So indeed, that is my thought, and I'm sure my brother's thought as well. So getting into the program, do you remember our last little bit of the program? You had me smiling, brother Gregory. I had a big smile on my face when you was telling me about crypto and the dollar. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Can you recap what you were saying? Because I really want to start off and go from there, because we're talking about a wealth plan.
Well, the crypto, as we all know, is a digital dollar. Is that me?
No, that's me. Go ahead.
Okay. We all know that the crypto is a digital dollar, and it is the future of money, to put it in layman's terms. And in order for crypto to be successful, we have to believe in it, in the sense of we have to be able to you know put things in cryptocurrency that qualify it to be legal. So, for instance, um, $100 today is always going to be $100 50 years from now. It's just the money does not change its amount. It's what we pay for things that change the amount. So I can pay for a Snickers bar today, which I think is last time I checked, I think it was like $1.75, $1.25, something like that. Whereas when I was a kid, you could get a Snickers bar same size for 50 cents. So we have to make sure that we focus on not devaluing the things that we invest in. So, um, things that shouldn't be valuable become too expensive for us to pay for, like water. Like, I pray to God that water never goes up in price. Right now, I think you still can go buy a gallon of distilled water for less than $2. Um, I remember growing up, it used to be somewhere around 50, 60 cents, depending on if you bought the Kroger brand or the Publix brand. But we have to make sure that when we use crypto, we make sure it kind of levels the playing field versus, you know, create a hardship for anyone. Hopefully that'll work. You're on mute.
Yeah, yeah, okay, that phone had me made me mute, and I forgot it. But anyway, you was mentioning water and the amount as though it was normal or natural. For me, when they started talking about paying for water, it wasn't something you had to do. I thought people were making jokes. The thought of paying for water, that just sounds outrageous. And eventually, a few years later, they kind of tied it to it might be some health precautions. But even with that, the thought of paying for water, something's wrong with that. Dr. King,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
yeah, I was saying the thought of paying for water, something is wrong with that. Once people impose something and that's the only thing they know, it becomes normal. And like the way you said, it was 50 and now it's increased. So because you didn't know when there was no such thing as selling water, that seems acceptable. And the people that'll come behind you and they'll look at, you can remember 50 cents when I can remember it's free. There's a lot of things that happen like that. And I wouldn't say trend or whatever, but things change. And unfortunately, they aren't always for the better. I like what you were saying about the future of crypto, but at the same time, investing, observing the value of something. And I'm still trying to, I can relate to that because when you think about crypto, one of the first things they'll tell you is people can invent money out of nowhere. But if you think about it, it isn't really inventing money, it's really creating value. When people can create value, uh, something that probably was nothing or worth nothing, all of a sudden people are paying for. I want to use this crazy example. I don't know if you've heard of the term clay dirt. You don't hear it as much now, but when I was coming up, we were walking and we passed this what people call clay dirt all the time. Never a second thought. And then people somehow it became popular, and they started paying for clay dirt. I mean, it's just a matter of where people place the money and where they place their value. But if you remember last week, we talked about sentiments. What were person's sentiments concerning this or their sentiments concerning that? And we even used that example of crypto and how, depending on what a person's sentiments are, how it would go up or down. But I want to bring that even home more now, because when we talk about a wealth plan, we have to first understand wealth. And when we understand wealth, then we can actually determine how we want to use it, lose it, or what we want to do with it. So, but before we get into that, our little conversation on crypto, I did pull a video I wanted to share. So, if everyone else will bear with us, we'll take a look at this.
I'm really passionate about awakening the community to the new technologies that we have today, because there are so many technologies out there right now that can help solve poverty issues and a lot of the issues that really, really affect us. But we're like totally in the dark about these technologies, so we have a lot of misconceptions. My name is Savannah Evans, and I'm the founder of Guapcoin. That is a cryptocurrency that I launched back in 2017. Guapcoin is a new kind of money. It is a digital currency. It is blockchain driven, which means that it's giving you transparency into your money and you are the bank. It's removing all restrictions. It's taking you to a new level of freedom when it comes to what you can do with your money. That's what Guapcoin is.
We believe that the future of money is rapidly changing, and as a culture, we now have the perfect opportunity to build systems that are in alignment with the core values of community that we wish to strengthen.
And Guapcoin's goal is to not only to build this monetary system, but to also build a community, which is something we struggle in. But guess what brings us together? Money. Nothing brings people together better than money. So that's what we're doing with Guapcoin. We're building the basis to build a strong community.
Today, I want to talk to you about an exciting new blockchain called Guapcoin X-Chain. With Guapcoin X-Chain, we aim to empower our community to create innovative solutions that are accessible, simple, and in alignment with our values. So join us on this exciting journey as we build the future of finance and community together.
My reasoning for getting into crypto and blockchain is because I felt that it would be a great solution to close the wealth gap. There's a huge digital divide. And you would think that in this day and time, our digital access issues would be lowered, but they're not. The wealth gap between the Black and white communities is something that's been growing for decades and just getting bigger and bigger. When it comes to crypto itself, this becomes a transparent way for us to track the movement of money in our community. I've been in technology for over 25 years. So I'm a blockchain expert, AI expert, and pretty much anything technology. I love it. Understand that there are no people doing any of this. This is all software. My biggest quality to me is enduring and producing, because when you put something out, it's like giving birth to a baby. It's like, here it is. It's there. It's functioning for the world to see. You can't take it back. They can't take it away from you. Another one of my biggest strengths is my relatability. My kids keep me grounded. I have 8 of them and most of them are grown now, but I feel like I grew up with them as well. I'm a little bit of an introvert, so I don't go out much, so it's kind of hard for me to relate a little bit. I'm actually on the spectrum, so I'm kind of closed in, but they keep me, aware and out there, and they're like, well, okay, this is going on. My oldest son is a game developer in Roblox, and he comes and he fills me in on the metaverse stuff and what's the latest this and the latest that. I was born in Long Island. I grew up in Brooklyn / Amityville, Long Island. I went to a tech high school. I went to Brooklyn Tech. So I was exposed to technology, I guess, very early on. But it was my grandfather, I think when I was about 11 years old, that told me, if you get into computers, you're going to do so well. And he didn't know anything about computers. So that was a prophecy. And eventually I got into blockchain, which took me a while because I was exposed to blockchain very early, except I didn't get it just like everybody else did. But when I did finally get into it, I realized that, hey, this is money. Do you know that this is the answer to a lot of our problems out here on the street? So, so I got into it and I started Guapcoin. I was inspired to use the name because I wanted to have something that my community would recognize as money. So using a term that we use in our community for money, I was like, it was a no-brainer. We have to do that because that's going to break down a lot of barriers. I just recently finished the Guap Mall. Initially, I had a lot of pushback. It was like, well, why do you need a Black crypto? We could just use this or we could just use that. Fast forward to now. People realize why we need more voices, why we need more representation, and even in money, why we need more segmentation in our money. One of the end games is to be able to tap into a resource that we generate, because in the African American community, we spend trillions of dollars. So where's that money going? Of course, not back in the community. When you get in when you're around the right people who are really about this, there are a lot of women in this, believe it or not. And they believe in it, in crypto in general, just as much as I do. And they're very relatable and very ready to talk with you. So you want to connect with these types of people, not the anonymous people on the internet, because there's a lot of scammers out there on the internet, but there are a lot of us who are known and we're putting ourselves out there. So, reach out to us, find out where we're going to be. Where we're going to speak, where we're going to pop up, and you be there, but you need to know in less than an hour, everything that you need to know as a regular common person that's just looking to break out of this financial stronghold that the system has us in.
The things that we're looking forward to doing and implementing for the community. And I'm so hyped. Y'all understand. I'm so excited.
I'm excited about blockchain elevating the Black community because it's going to give us a tool to be able to trust one another. And that's what blockchain does. Blockchain will literally spell it out what your money is doing, and it will let you know that your money is making a difference. So that's why we need it in our community.
All right. Your thoughts, my brother, after watching that, hearing that, and our little conversation last week and just now, your thoughts?
I think it's a great idea for blockchain to be focused on the Black community, because then we can track that our money is going towards us versus just dumped into a pool and people that know how to fill out tax forms get the money instead of us.
Right.
So I think it's a great idea, and I'm actually curious. I'm going to be looking up some information on her, and I'm curious how she creates the blockchain. Like how is it being created? I was wondering if I can how do I get it on it? So I'm going to look her up after this show.
Okay. I like your forward thinking, my brother, because there's some things that she said that I'm going to pull out, because as you've heard me say on here, that was something I was looking to get to that I haven't gotten to yet. But it surrounds this same technology and the fact that it's there and everything can be tracked. I think she said it was 17 or 18 that she started and she was doing this. And I was telling someone just the other day, she will never get her due praise, probably as long as she's living, because, history has a way of reflecting our deeds and our act. People will give us notice then. But when you look at 17, or even if it was 18 or 19, the idea of doing this coin to make it that I would give the community power. If you look at the situation overseas now with Brazil, Russia, Ukraine, well, I don't think it's Ukraine, but it's there, India, I think that's what it is, and South Africa and Russia. All these individuals have come together to come up with their own currency so they can come from under this oppression that they see as it has been in the past with the United States of America. So when she did this back in that time frame, these organizations weren't heard of that type unity. But when she said that her grandfather gave her a prophecy, I think it was very profound that she sought to build something under the mission and the intent that she did. It's like she was ahead of everything that we see going on now. When people are talking the devaluation of the dollar, we should have been thinking empowerment of our community, because in reality, that's what it looks like. When you start to that question about where do we spend our money, certainly not in our communities. There's the question of how much money do we spend here or there, because nobody's tracking it per se. But if we had something of this nature and actually got behind it, it would make a tremendous difference in our lives. So as you do your research, just let me know. I'll be glad to assist you in reaching out any way I can.
Well, I like this for several reasons. Here today, the United States has set aside over $1 trillion to every state in the United States for people to move outside the city. They literally just give you a free loan and you pay it back with very low interest rates. And nobody knows about this. You want to know why nobody knows about this? because
What's
they
that?
refuse to advertise it. They refuse to. They said, we will not advertise this. They have enough money to literally give everybody an acre of land outside of any metropolitan area. They literally have enough money to do this. And they said, all you have to do is find the land. We'll finance the house that you have being built, or you could buy an existing house that's outside of the metropolitan area of your local city. And they say, okay, all you have to do is take this money, build your house, and then you can pay it back in 30 years. It's very few banks that want to give you a 30-year loan, much less they will give you up to $1 million, up to $1 million in loan in a loan amount. And everybody's approved. You just have to have some sort of income. It don't matter if you want Social Security or not. You can have it at the very least Social Security, and they say, okay, this is how much we will give you, because this is how much we're going to charge you on your, based off of your Social Security, and this is how much we're going to give you. So they can do that. And people don't know about this loan, and it's sad. It really bothers me, because you know about the terminology called surplus, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
All right. So in the state of Georgia, there was a surplus of $5 million last year that nobody knew about. So nobody knew about this, but guess what happened? Andre, our mayor, he built another project. So instead of uplifting his community and giving them property, he said, no, we're going to build a project and we're going to keep them down.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So the previous mayors before him, they tore down the project, say, look, we need to tear down this bug infested and give these people a better place to stay. And then instead of just giving them land that they can possibly own, he builds them projects to keep them down, keep them from owning anything.
Mm-hmm.
And people look at it, oh, he's doing good for the community. No, he's not. In the metropolitan area, there are plenty of acres of land that the government owns, but he chose to build the projects right on top of the old projects. And that bothers me a lot. And
Right. Mm-hmm.
I feel like there was way more opportunity to just go ahead and fill out all those forms instead of giving, I think it's 250 apartments, instead of giving 250 people an apartment that they can still get kicked out of, why don't you give 250 acres that Atlanta has sitting somewhere around here and just build them a small home on each acre? Why don't you do that? That would give them incentive to not want to lose that house. Even if they have Social Security, they know they can give up $150 to say, this is mine. They can't say that if theirs in an apartment.
Mm-hmm.
And then on top of it, it's a lease. So at the end of that lease, you have a choice of getting in getting out or paying more for the next year. So he's going to make them pay more, or they're going to be forced to move out eventually. And I think that's horrible. That's horrible, because as we all know, even if you're in low income housing, they go based off of what the medium rental rate is here in Atlanta. And as we all know, the rental rate has been going up. So eventually those people in that low income houses, they may be paying $500-$600 a month. It's going to jump up to $800 to $1,000, and then they're going to be homeless again. So he's not doing them any good by giving them a place that they're eventually going to be priced out of. Why don't you give them a place that they can actually own in the future, and they'll be a long-term tax-paying resident of Atlanta? Why don't you do that? That makes more sense, having people that pay taxes in the long run versus having people that might end up being homeless and don't pay taxes.
Right. You know, and what you're saying, that's one view of looking at it. And the reason I say that is this: on Wednesday we were talking about inheritance. The term came up. We talked about inheritance, and there are people that inherit property. Maybe, let's say you mentioned 8 acre, maybe 20 acres. That family had farms. Those people had the mindset to sell that land and move into the city. So what you're saying is true. It should. And I find what you're saying very interesting, because if you look at all the money that you just mentioned and all the land that you just mentioned, and there's still the question on the table of reparations. It's almost like you won't address one thing that's been on the table for years, but you come up with these new issues of how you want to utilize money that you aren't willing to pay for. Well, depending on whether a person thinks it's legitimate or not, but you don't even hear. You haven't in the past heard. Someone made a lie out of me. I was going through looking for some media, and I stumbled across a video where a young lady was speaking. I think it was New York or someplace, and she was actually speaking on reparation and how they're trying to bring that agenda in now. And there was an article where Vice President Kamala Harris had made some statement concerning reparation. And I look at it, I've said this before, I try to make the statement loosely, but there's a transition of wealth going on now, and it's going to come about. There's a saying, when enough people become dissatisfied, it changes systems. So we have systems in place now that are subject to change based on some of the things that's going on. And there isn't going to be a way of avoiding that, I don't think, because when you start looking at what's going on, there's just too much division that's beginning to come into play. So as the people become unsettled, things start to change as a means of trying to bring about structure. Out of chaos comes order, and things are getting chaotic. But I love your comment, and probably by the next show, if you could get me a link or something I could share. I know we don't have that many viewers, or maybe it'll be something that people can actually pass on, because as you stated, if they're not going to advertise that, and that is out there, there's a lot of people that, along with creating all this debt with student loans, could actually look at getting their own place, so they won't be struggling with two issues versus just the one. You were about to say.
Okay, so yes, I can give you a little bit of information. So the money that I was referring to, that's already gone for this year. That's gone. He spent it on building those projects. Those projects cost about $5 million, and that was the leftover money from the year before. So that money is already gone. However, every single year, Georgia has gotten, just towards housing, Georgia has gotten $10 million or more towards housing. So that's for every Georgia resident. And it's called the USDA Rural Development Plan. And what happens is, every single year, each state gets a certain amount of money for housing. And it has gone up since the last time I looked at it, which was, I couldn't see what was spent last year because it hasn't been updated yet. But the year before, in 2022, Atlanta got about 7 million, and Georgia as a whole got about 10 million. And it went up. I know it, because of inflation, it has gone up each year since then. So I encourage people and listeners to start looking into the government for your free money. Biden feels guilty about putting Black people in jail specifically, and now he's giving all this money out. Like, literally trillions of dollars are sitting on the table waiting for you to grab them. All you got to do is type in whatever you need and type in U.S. government, and I guarantee you there's a grant, scholarship, fund, something out there. Like, if you say, I want to own my house, you type in, I want to own my house. And the USDA Rural Development Plan is literally a guaranteed loan that the state of Georgia have to give it to you. long as you live in the state of Georgia for, I think it's like 2 years. If you've been a resident of Georgia for 2 years and you paid your taxes at least once, you will get that loan. And you have, well, there's only two things you have to have: a residence in Georgia and a viable income. So it doesn't matter if you're on Social Security now, you know, you whatever means you have coming in, and it's not child support. It can't be child support. As long as you have some income coming in your house and it's steady, meaning it has to be for at least 6 months, you will get that money. And it's up to $1 million, depending on the house you choose and the land you choose. They will pay for it, free and clear, no questions asked. And then once you establish your payment, that payment will not change. So even though interest rates will go up in the future, that payment is only set for the interest rate you get approved for in that moment. And it will stay there for that moment for the duration of your 30 years. So that guarantees you that you will keep your home. So if you can afford that house today, it guarantees that that payment will stay the same for 30 years from now. So, and it's not just for houses. I have, well, not me personally, but let's just say I have a school loan hanging over my head. Biden he paid for that too. All you gotta do is type in, I owe student loans, how will government pay? Type it in Google and they will pull up, it's literally money sitting on the table. And nobody knows where this is, because swinging it all the way back to the black crypto, they will tell you, look, if you want this money, here it is. This is where this money's going to. They could track and tell you where it's going to.
Right.
Whereas when you pay taxes, you have no idea where that dollar goes. As soon as you pay it, it's gone. You don't know what happened to it. And generally speaking, the average Georgian does not know where their taxes are going to. I tried to check my taxes one time before, and they will give you a breakdown if you ask for it. If you ask for it, they're required by the law to give you a breakdown of where your taxes go to. If you ask for it, you will know where it goes. But I feel like with crypto, it'll be a lot easier to track.
Right. And one thing with crypto that I was looking at, because, you know, people talk about systems, the government is quick to run to crypto because it gives them that much more control. But it also brings about so much more transparency. You know, when you look at the amount of money, like you see your very same example, this amount was allocated. How many people did it go to? How many people did it serve? You know, all of that stuff is there at the push of a button or a search query. And you know how fast computers spit stuff out versus trying to go to some place and requesting it. And it takes 10 days or whatever to come back to you. So there's some things that are positive that are going to occur with that. But we need to realize also that he who gets behind in a race must forever remain behind or run faster than the man in front. When you heard Tavania speaking, you know, she was speaking on a topic there, depending on who's listening. You have some Black people that don't want to hear anything that they think might cause a rift or disturb what they look at as the harmoniousness between Black and white people. But there are others who look at the debt that's owed to me, and that is their primary focus. But regardless of how you look at it, there's a saying that truth will make us free. So when we put it out there and we are searching and aspiring for truth, that's when issues like this become very important. But I'm going to show another video now. And if you notice, she mentioned wealth, right? This video that I'm about to show, it used to be people would just give you something as news. But this, I noticed this station is supposed to be a 24/7 station. And the way they do that now is they're using the internet more. So the internet used to be called the information highway, and it's still that. But the question we should keep in mind is that as we hear things, we need to hear them and do our due diligence. And listen to what this guy here is saying. And he actually did this. This was done as a result of the Juneteenth. But listen to the information that's brought forward.
In 1865 that Union General Gordon Granger brought the news to enslaved people in Galveston, Texas, more than 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation. Later that same year, slavery was formally abolished in the United States with the ratification of the 13th Amendment. Hardships, however, continued to hurt Black Americans all these years later, including what is a persistent wealth gap. According to a Federal Reserve Bank survey, the average level of wealth in a Black household was just over $200,000, while a white household averaged over $1.3 million. A fresh new book, 15 cents on the dollar, How Americans Made the Black-White Wealth Gap, examines the massive wealth disparity that has been virtually stuck for generations and details the structural economic barriers that Black Americans are still facing today. The co-authors of this book, Louise Story and Ebony Reed, join me now here in Studio 57 to dive into what you have both been telling me is a topic that no book exists on as far as the history and where it is, where things stand to the present day. That to me is remarkable. But first, talk to me about you both meeting at the Wall Street Journal during the pandemic and going through experiences that made you realize a book like this is even necessary.
Sure. Thank you for having us. In the summer of 2020, like many people in our country, Louise and I, we were trapped in our homes that first summer. We couldn't go anywhere. And so we started having conversations in that pandemic summer about injustices and equities we had seen in our lifetimes and workplaces. We were reading books together. And we found that there was no book that had reported on the Black-white wealth gap from history to current time with real contemporary people that are living today.
Louise, why was that? Why is that?
Well, you know, wealth has not actually been a big focus of discussions, and it's not very well understood in our country. You know, when you talk a lot about equality and even economic equality, people focus more on income. I'm sure you've heard a lot about the pay gaps.
Right.
And that's partly because, you know, companies can do something about income gaps, right? There's been a lot of move for pay equity, and also because that's something that started with the male and female pay gap. So the pay gap and income gap has dominated a lot of conversations. But, you know, income is different from wealth. Right. Wealth is what you own minus what you owe. And even two people working today at most places who are Black and white making the same income would, statistically speaking, have very different levels of wealth. So we thought it was essential that we put some focus on this.
And for many of us, wealth is inherited. The income you make now is something you can do about. Some of this you can't really control. And you have both tracked the lives of 7 Black Americans throughout the book to help personify and give examples for this massive wealth disparity. Give us an example of one person you profiled and what stood out to the both of you.
Sure. I mean, among the 7 people, I want to say is Ambassador Andrew Young, civil rights leader. Many people remember him as being the former mayor of Atlanta.
Right.
We have Michael Render, known as Killer Mike, the rapper. We also have a television executive and some people that others will encounter for the first time as they read the book. One family story that really sticks out to me is a young leader. He was formerly the head of the Georgia NAACP. He was trying to move his life forward economically while also fighting for civil rights, and he had more than $100,000 in student loan debt. And so the debt of student loans is a very crushing thing for many Black families. Many Black students who graduate from college carry a lot of student debt.
I'm glad you used that word crushing because it's difficult for anyone who carries that debt, but particularly if you don't have those lifelines at home that you've inherited. One thing you both take great effort to do is not to take any position of a government policy or perspective, but you do look at how government programs have at least exacerbated the problem or in some ways helped ameliorate it. Louise, what jumps out at you as far as government programs that are partly to blame and can do something about it?
You know, there's examples through all of history and even through today of government programs that have been more helpful to white families and not as helpful to Black families. So they've been unequally applied. And, you know, some things that jump out, we cover Freedmen's Bank, which is a bank for formerly enslaved people in the late 1800s, which took their money and then lost it lost most of their money. And we talk about the New Deal, which created mostly helped the white middle class. But actually, the New Deal and the GI Bill were not so easily available to Black Americans. But we also talk about things today, like the bankruptcy system, which actually is race neutral. Anyone could file for bankruptcy, but the experience is not actually a race neutral experience. And Black Americans who enter bankruptcy are much less likely than white Americans to have their debts restructured or forgiven, which, by the way, if you get your debt forgiven, you're wealthier because some of that debt is gone, and more white Americans, a higher percentage of them who file for bankruptcy, are able to get the debt forgiveness. So we have a chapter on that.
Okay, and I know that your effort for both of you making this book, putting so much data, research, time, and effort into it, is to make it as accessible to people as possible. And that's partly because, Louise, I'd heard you mention that most people in America don't believe or don't know that there even is a wealth gap. Why is that?
You know, again, it's because people don't actually know what wealth is. People confuse wealth with income. And also, people see someone with a house and they think they're wealthy, but they don't know about that hidden debt behind it. We're all kind of private about wealth. I mean, you may not even know the wealth of people in your family. So people don't talk about wealth in their social circles, and the government does not release much information on wealth. And that leads to a lack of understanding about who has it and who doesn't.
What do you walk away from this book with? What suggestions can the rest of us take to address this disparity in some way?
Thank you. So first, people need to know the statistic, and we are working hard to try to make this a nationally known statistic, 15 cents on the dollar. Louise and I have been holding forums and community symposiums since February across this country.
And briefly explain that premise. I think we mentioned it at the top, but it's worth repeating.
Yes. So the typical Black family has 15 cents in wealth for every $1 the typical white family has. And in terms of what people can do, one of the things we recommend at the end of the book with our personal recommendations is that at some point in people's lives, they consider working in partnership with a person who is different from them to understand another person's lived experiences and the issues they face in this country. And we've certainly done that working together on this book.
You guys are a model for what the rest of us could potentially do. It's an incredible read. I'm so glad you put so much effort and research into this. Ebony Reed and Louise Story, authors of 15 Cents on the Dollar, How Americans Made the Black-White Wealth Gap. Thanks so much for your time and joining me today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, your thoughts, my brother. As you can see, the book 15 Cents on the Dollar. That's an interesting statistical fact. 15 cents on the dollar. What are your thoughts?
So I've known this since my freshman year of Tuskegee University. It was presented to us back then. It was 20 cents on the dollar, and basically, they were telling us, going to a Black university helps, further the wealth gap. I mean, not further, but diminish that wealth gap between Blacks and whites. And I keep, like my younger brother, he's 7 years younger than me, and he actually does not believe racism still exists. And I said, blatant racism does not exist. Systemic racism is very open and prevalent. And this is another form of systemic racism by not showing Black people what wealth is. Like Black people as a whole, average, I'll say as an average, they think a Mercedes-Benz makes them look wealthy when the car itself does not make you look wealthy at all. Because if you're leasing it, you have to get that back in 2.5 years. And if you don't own your car or you don't own your house, that's not wealth at all. Like I've never had a lease payment because my grandfather told me if you want something, save your money, put in the work, and go buy it. Don't rent it, don't lease it, don't do nothing of that sort. And I've always owned my cars. So I've had more cars than you have fingers and toes. And I've owned every single one of my cars, and I'm proud to say that. Also, when I own my car, I'm allowed to put as many miles as I want on my car. I'm allowed to do any modifications to my car. And when I sell it, the money's not going to a bank. It's not going to a dealership. It's going in my pocket. So,
Right.
you know, I was telling my brother that I was like, you know, he had a little Toyota Corolla. And I was telling him, I was like, just stay in that little Toyota Corolla as long as it will keep moving. Save your money and buy a car. Don't lease a car. But of course, he's not going to listen to me. So he leased the car. And he's gonna get into this pattern where he's gonna have to lease a car every 2 years, and he's paying all this money for a car he will never own. I said, in the time period that you have all these cars, you could have owned 3 cars. You could have owned 4 cars. So, like, you need to stop leasing life and buying what you want. And like my last car I had was a Jaguar, and I sold it. And 100% of the profit went into my bank account. And that's where I'm trying to tell people, like, you need to start buying things. Mm-hmm. Like the last shirt and tie that I bought, I went to a black a boutique right here in Atlanta. It's over there in the 5th Ward. Over there in 4th Ward. And she had beautiful silk ties. I said I want 2 or 3 of them. And she charged me just a little bit less if I was going into Macy's because I was buying so many of them. But I said, no, charge me the same amount as if I were to go to Macy's. And I said, don't diminish your worth. And she was like, well, I'm glad you said that. I won't do that anymore. I said, yes, because you're going to spend your money at that black-owned farmers market, right? And she said, yes. I said, and you're going to put that black-owned farmers market food on your black household plate, right? She said, yeah. I said, well, keep it there. So I made a decision when I turned 35 to stop buying from anyone else other than black. And unfortunately, I can't do that with, gasoline or electricity. But if I could, I would. If there was a black-owned gas company around me that sold gasoline, I would buy it from them exclusively. And it's because I know I'm contributing to my race. Now, unfortunately, we don't have a car, so the next best thing is to buy an American car. Like my next car I'm going to buy is going to be an American car. Mm-hmm. And granted, I never buy a new car because I'm kind of against. I'm against EVs, period, but that's a whole nother conversation. But I like the fact that there's books out there showing you in your face systemic racism. And there's people that still believe that there's no such thing. It really baffles me. Like, what?
Mm-hmm. In order to see systemic racism, would you agree that a person has to be looking for it?
No, you don't have to be looking. Well, I think in today's age, yes, you're right. You probably have to look for it because they're so good at hiding it. They are so good at hiding. Like I was speaking about the money that's left on the table for Atlanta to build more projects. That's systemic racism. And then they shroud it around, oh, Andre did a good thing for the lower class people. Did he though? Did he? Like they make it seem like they did something good for people when in actuality they just appease the Democrats, if you will. Mm-hmm. When in reality they could have did something way better with that money. Like the same amount of money would have actually it probably would have cost less, and they would have had taxpayers paying their taxes. So for the short term that he's in office, he wants to do something that makes it look like he did something. For the average person that's ignorant to systemic racism, they think that he did something good.
Right. And presidents, whoever's in office, usually they'll follow that pattern. Some people even have the mindset that they're looking for that one thing or whatever. And that one thing that they do, which is politically motivated, they'll reelect that person for that same one thing, just borrowing all the things that they didn't do. Brother Brown, thank you for joining us. Brother Brown apparently has been listening in. He shared a comment. Brother Brown says, greetings. We are never taught economic survival. We must invest in insurance and the stock market. 10% of what you make is yours to keep, according to Dr. A.G. Gaston. We must pool our resources and control the economics of our communities. When I was coming up, that name A.G. Gaston, you heard it a lot. He made a big difference in our communities. To hear someone made reference to that much pertaining to what they knew and were able to do and achieve, that speaks volume. But I like what my brother said. He's correct. He's correct about that. And not just, it's almost like Black history. We've come to realize, a lot of people have, that you can't rely on the schools to teach Black history. And it's sad because I could say the same thing about economics, but if I said that, I would be kind of digging a ditch, because there's a saying, you can't teach what you don't know. If we've never been taught that, how can we teach that lesson at home? And I'm going to say this because there's certain things that really bother me when it comes down to our communities. The people that are in the know, they find a way to monetize the knowledge that they know versus empowering the people that are in need of it. There's nothing wrong with that to a degree, but if you ain't giving something back, if you insurance agent, and I'm glad my brother mentioned that, because I remember as a child, there were people that came by on like a weekly or bi-weekly, monthly basis, and they had this book and they was always talking to the adults. They actually did write insurance policies. And for most of the time, for a large period of time, those people were white. It was coming through the Black neighborhood and they were writing these policies. And we don't even know how they compare to other policies. But my point is, those type things there are things that empower. And depending on what the people are doing in your community, for example, if there's two insurance companies or one insurance company, I don't know exactly what it was Mr. Gaston did, but it was banking, insurance, may have been both. But whatever it was, the fact that he was so well known, he must have been doing something right. And when you have that, people get behind whatever it is. And when people with money decide this is what we're going to do, if they get enough people in support of that, then they're able to build something that's lasting. That, and along with that building something that's lasting, comes the education. For example, the Black crypto, one of the biggest challenges is the education piece, which we'll be talking about moving forward. But we have the means and we have the resources. My brother nailed it. We must pool our resources and control the economics of our community. At least we've done one thing correct. We haven't made reference to they don't come in our community and shop. That's not even a question of that. But we haven't really taken ownership of the fact that we go outside of our community where we spend all of our dollars. Some things we can change overnight if we just change our mindset. So moving forward, the On the Rise movement, educating, motivating, inspiring individuals to rise above life situation and circumstances. Conversations like we're talking about now, and I'm sure you can attest to it, it isn't really popular communications. This isn't the conversation that most people have in circles, particularly people that are financially well off. They are normally looking, how can they make more money? And if that means that they can do something that could take money out of the community versus trying to bring something in, that dollar that they're in desiring, 9 times out of 10 will cause them to do that. But to see a different results, we got to have a different mindset. And it begins like this, with communication, with dialogue. Your thought?
I completely agree with that. When when Mr. Brown mentioned Dr. A.G. Gaston, I immediately remember my black economics teacher. I'll never forget him. God rest his soul. He taught me about taxes, and he taught me how to pay $150 in taxes every single year, despite how much I made. And he taught everyone in that class how to do it. And to this day, I only pay between 150 and 250 in taxes, despite anything that I own. And he said, "Guess what? I'm teaching you how to do this. White people have been doing this since taxes were invented." And he said, "There's going to be even more people that do this." And he said, "I'm teaching, you young black boys and girls this before you even get in the workforce, so you won't get taken advantage of. So you can keep at the very least 60% of everything that you make." And he said, if you ever hear this name, don't ever follow his lead. And it was Bridgman. He said Bridgman bought 3 Wendy's, and he was looked at in a false way because he has a net worth about $600 million now, but he bought 3 Wendy's fast food joints, and he continued to build Wendy's and put them in low-income black neighborhoods, and he always had the cloud around him. Oh, he provides jobs for black people. But on the very back end of that, he was poisoning people. As we all know, fast food in itself is poison. So he has a $600 million net worth. Well, 580 of it is Wendy's alone by itself. He has, I believe, over 2,000 restaurants now. And every time he gets enough money to build another one, he doesn't put it in the white neighborhood. He puts it in the black neighborhood. If you look at the location of just 5 random Wendy's that he owns, you'll see that they're on a Martin Luther King Drive. They're on a main street in the black neighborhood. And the thing is, in order for black people to rise up from the systemic racism, it's going to cost a lot. I don't know what it's going to cost a lot of, but it's going to cost a lot. In order for us to break free of the systemic racism, we have to stop listening to those loud people that are telling us to buy Louis Vuitton and Ferraris and all this. Stop listening to them and listen to the people that say, buy land. Buy land in Alabama. Buy land in Alabama is $10,000 every square acre. Go buy an apartment and rent it out and get your generational wealth. Go buy a condo and rent it out. Go buy a house and rent it out. Buy these things with the free money that they guarantee you as a black person. Go buy these things and generate wealth versus, oh yeah, I got the new Lambo, I got it on 24s. Yeah, That's not wealth, because what's going to happen in 25 years, that Lambo's going to break down. That Lambo's going to break. It's going to get rusted. It's going to break down. But what's going to happen in 25 years when you own 1 acre of land? That land that you bought for $10,000 is going to be worth $50,000 in 25 years.
Right.
So one, land being wealth that we need to start preaching to our children. No. Save your money from buying that Lamborghini that's $350,000 and go buy you several acres of land for $350,000. Because that Lambo, you can't even drive it every day, because if you risk yourself of getting shot, getting robbed, and you risk yourself of an oil change, a simple oil change on a Lamborghini is like $2,000. Why even have that car?
Right.
So whereas to cut 2 acres of land costs you 2 gallons of gasoline. That's it.
Right. Right.
So,
go ahead. I apologize. Go ahead.
So I mean, it's going to cost us something, and I haven't figured out what it is, but it's going to cost us something to stop this systemic racism.
Okay. You know what it's going to cost us? It's going to cost us what we're doing now. We're going to have to rise. And that's what I love about almost every program we do. It brings home the need to rise. Being on the rise, educating, motivating, and inspiring individuals to rise above life situations and circumstances. If when you say you don't know what it's going to take, Tavania spoke about a currency that, as you use it, generates a fuel to the owner. And in this case, if the focus is the Black community, it generates an income that can be reinvested within the Black community. And it is transparent, and you can actually vote on what they're going to do with it. They have what's called a white paper. As you go and look for it, Brother Gregory, just type in Guap Coin X. And as you go in there, find their white paper. That white paper is like the business plan. And it's like the smart contract. Computers, they are insensitive to anything. And when things are done in that manner, the computer carries them out the way that they are written. So when we look at technology going forward and the fact of cryptocurrency, that is an answer, as you just said, not knowing what it's going to take. If we invest in those that are investing in our community, that the information that you stated, the thing that you were taught, that information is priceless. As I listen to you, I think about the times when, depending on how many hours I work, when I should have a larger check, a third of that check goes to taxes. That information is knowledge that people need to know. So I think I asked you to do one thing earlier, so add that to it. They don't have to right away, but if you can compile that information, those are the things that we want to pass on. And that's empowerment. Knowledge isn't power. Knowledge is potential power. So if we can empower and enrich our community using cryptocurrency, and that's just the beginning. There's some things that are going to unfold, or we will be informing and educating concerning, that has an opportunity to make a tremendous difference in everyone's life. And I like what Brother Brown just alluded to, economics. When we teach and we combine and we unify, and we can see the results, and if that dollar, like you said, that's 20 years from now still going to be a dollar based on the dollar standard, but that crypto that you spent $10 for maybe year one and maybe year two, if that long, be worth $100. Mathematically, it only makes sense to really study where you're spending, what you're spending, and why. And when we take that type of deliberate action, we'll see deliberate results. I may mention.
We gotta.
Go ahead.
I'm saying we got to stop letting these companies feed off of our hard work. Like, people say slavery is over, but when we work for something and we get our 60%, but then we turn around and spend that 60% in something that's going to kill us, like fast food, that makes someone else richer, we got to stop doing that. Look, Bridgman is a Black man. He has his wealth. He don't need to earn any more money from Wendy's from us. He don't need to. He owns Ebony Magazine as well, but he don't need to earn any more money from Wendy's. He's got enough money. So we don't need to eat that poison. Like, let's just stop eating the poison. Let's stop buying the foreign this and the foreign that. Let's just focus on Black people. Like, if we eat Black, buy Black, live Black, then they can't feed off of us no more. Then they're gonna have to find another way to kill, destroy, and try to move us from each other. As long as we stay focused on us, that's the only way we got to do it. And I hate the fact that this new generation is focusing on this, that, and the third. Like, and they're throwing it in our face. They're throwing the racism, systemic racism in our face, and people think it looks good. Like, they're throwing ignorance in your face. Like, Kamala Harris is a great candidate for women, for blacks, for Indians, for everybody she wants to run for. But when she puts ignorance on her stage that profits off of ignorance, when she had, I didn't even see it because I wasn't going to support it. She had Megan Thee Stallion. I heard one verse from one of her songs. I said, that's not someone I need to give my attention to. But she put that in the front stage. She put that in front of everybody to let people, trying to get the ignorant black folk to be on her side. Like, really? That's the game you want to play? Instead of put somebody that's empowering, that's going to be good for the black people, you want to put somebody that's going to bring black people down and bring black men down on that. Because the verse I heard from Megan Thee Stallion basically said she don't need a man for nothing except to make a check. Really? Come on now. Like,
that piece there is a show within itself. But those are the type things there that we have to overcome. We have to actually renew, revive, and actually set some values. As long as a person can do something and they're not going to be called out, or it's not anyway going to be seen as a negative, to the point where silence implies consent. If you think about what you're saying, and you find the same thing in some of our churches, that's just a quietness that we have had for too long. It's time we become purposeful and remember that the lion is king of the jungle, and because he's king of the jungle, he has a roar. And when he stops roaring, he will stop being respected as king of the jungle. So the things that you are saying are correct, and those are some things we need to look at addressing within our community. The media is going to paint, they're going to push that down our throats. The fast food restaurants are a matter of supporting. When we put it out there, we're not concerned with how much he makes, but he can't make it unless you shop there. If we put the emphasis where it goes and why not shopping there can be beneficial, because here's a potential for a restaurant that might serve us some healthier food, might even do more within the community. But until we make that an emphasis or make that a focus, this is what we're up against. And this is how we bring about this type change. It has to be a movement. As we move toward it, gravitate toward it, we'll begin to see some changes. Brother Brown just typed, he says that we must find the God within us. That is powerful, my brother. One moment, I got something on my screen. He says that we must find the God within us. Realize who we are. We must find the God within us and realize who we are. And Brother Brown, just so you know, those are the statements there that needs to be repeated, because most people aren't going to get that, as a matter of fact. But if they hear it enough, they might then begin to wonder, what is he talking about? And when they ask that question, what is he talking about, then opens the eyes, then opens the ears, and then comes the opportunity to actually learn what it is that he's talking about. So I love that statement. And that's one of those statements, believe it or not, you can't rely on the person understanding, because there's few that are going to. But the more you put out there what they don't understand, the more likely they are at some point to understand it. And when they get a clue, that's when things begin to change. And that's change.
Mr. Brown out here dropping dimes on us.
Hey, Mr. Brown is a true civil rights leader. He was back there in the era, his history with his dad and some of the things he did. He has a voice. I'm trying to get him on this program, and he's very enthused about what he's saying, the type of things. You know, sometimes people need to hear you speak, but there are other times they need to see you speak,
Mhm.
because that's twice the communication when you're doing so. But we've come near the end here, and the next program, Brother Gregory, if you can put a little segment together on that finance piece, if you want to, if you have it where you can present it, or just a link or something you'd like to share, that would be great, because I'm eager to hear that. I mean, when I think about the amount of money that I paid in taxes, and to hear you say how little you paid each check, man, that would have been like having a second job with the taxes that I paid.
Yeah, I mean, it's when I show people what they can write off on taxes, the amount that they get back, like if you drive back and forth to work, you write that off, and you get money back for that. Just the simple commute to work, you can get money back for. It's so many things that you can get money back for. If you do, all right, put it simple. You do anything that costs you over $500 in 1 year, you get a tax write-off. That's a very simple, plain way to think about it. If it costs you more than $500 to go to work, if you got to dry clean, if you got to drive to work, if you got to use transportation, anytime, write it off. If you got to buy your medication and you spend $500 in 1 year, write it off. The more you write off, instead of you paying $2,500, $3,000, $4,000 in 1 year, then you're back down to like $150 to $250 a year, because you're writing all these things off that you have to spend money on, that you already pay taxes on anyway. So, like, white people have been doing this for decades, and you think, oh, they're doing something good for the community. No, they're writing their taxes off. When you hear about a rich person giving something to a hospital, to a community, like, okay, Shepherd Center is one of the best spinal centers ever in the United States. And that whole building was written off because people kept donating to them. They kept growing and they kept donating. Every time you donate anything over $500, or I think it's $1,000 now, every time you donate over $1,000 to anywhere, you write that off. Get that money back. So if you're paying $4,000 and you write off $1,000, guess what? It's already down to $3,000.
And we're going to have to make that a part of that piece that you put together, because what you're saying, excuse me, is entirely correct. I remember it was so popular in the military to do bonds, and I guess maybe there was a deduction for that. But in the long term, what could have been done with those bonds? And even today, just the approach of something to have an end game or end goal. That you asked the question earlier, you don't know what it's going to take. I'm listening to you, and you know a lot more of what it's going to take than you realize. But we've covered about as much as we're going to get in today, and we will be returning on next Friday. And Brother Gregory, you have made this show tremendously significant. The things that you mentioned, fruit. It's like we have the fruit trees, and the things you said today are like the blossom. So I can't wait to see the fruit that they're going to yield.
All right, I can't wait to tell everybody about this USDA program.
Was get it down. So when you give it to them, if there's a link, and see, that's the thing, that when you come with that type of information, bring that website or whatever, because we want them to be able to go and do their due diligence. But thank you so very much. You've been very informative. This is the type of information here that changes minds, changes people, changes nations. And that's what we're trying to do. We thank you all for joining us for On the Rise Movement. We're going to call it at this point here. I want to invite you all Wednesday to join us on Rise to Prosperity. It's also about educating, motivating, inspiring individuals to rise above situations and circumstances. And how do you all like my new image here?
This is no time to engage in the luxury of cooling off or to take the tranquilizing drug of gradualism.
And I, for one, will join in with anyone Don't care what color you are, as long as you want to change this miserable condition that exists on this earth.
Greetings, I am Jamie Eaton. Join me Fridays at 8 p.m. for On the Rise movement. All right, so as you all can see, that little the change of the cover there, there's something I see that's occurring, and that's where we're going. Today was literally strategic, but we're going to make sure that we are relevant in all things that are going on and offer some things that whether people come or not, it's their choice. But if they do come, they will be empowered. So thanks again, my brother. And I will talk with you during the week, but I hope to share the stage with you again next Friday.
All right, I'll be there.
All right. Peace and blessings. And peace and blessings to you all. And thank you all.